Hi, and welcome to our review session this week for No Bones About It Puppy Day School. So the skills that we've been working on this week with the entire group, minus Pizza, who is only in week one, are stay and wait. And I'm going to do just a full description of how we start practicing those and the nuances between the two. And then during the most of what's going to happen in terms of you watching your puppies is going to be what Melissa's been doing all week in her practice session. So first, let's start with the difference between wait and stay. A lot of my students use these two interchangeably, and they're not interchangeable in my mind. Stay means don't move. So if I have asked you to sit and until you hear your release command or I tell you something else to do, you do not move if I add the word stay. If you're in a down and I say stay, you remain on the ground. If you're in a stand and I tell you stay, basically the only thing you can do is move your head and wag your tail. But your body position remains the same once I've added the cue stay. It is not easy. It requires, in the beginning, pretty good attention skills. So we work up to it. From the get-go, we've been adding extra treats to things to understand that, let's say I ask for a sit or I ask for a down. We don't just give one treat and then let the puppy get up. We might in the very beginning, just till we establish the actual behavior. But once we establish a behavior, we have been adding lots of treats before we release the puppy so that they start to understand it's not really a one and done before we ever start adding the word stay. So stay means you cannot move your body. Wait is a cue that is a boundary cue. It means you may not proceed forward once I have given you the cue wait. Let's talk about examples of where I would use the two. Obviously, stay is something that I want to use when I put a dog in a place, so a bed, things like that. Maybe I am at a crosswalk and I have my puppy in a sit and I tell them stay. I do not want you to move from that location until I'm ready to start walking again. Those are places where I would use stay. A place where I would choose to use wait would be going through any doorway. I open my front door. I do not want my puppy to run out that door until I've given them permission. And basically the permission is I've released you by saying, okay. So if I open the door and I say, wait, you cannot move through that boundary of the door. You can do whatever you want on the other side. You can run around in the house, you can sit, you can lie down, but you may not proceed through that boundary I have designated, which is a forward motion once I've said wait. Same thing when I am in the car and I open a car door. Wait. I don't care what. Could you use stay in that thing? Yeah, if you're going to reinforce don't move, go ahead and use stay. But most people just don't want the dog to jump out of the car. When I open a crate door, I want control. I want my dog to understand that you do not bolt out of your crate until I give you permission. So that would be another place where I would use wait. So they're very different skills. And it's really important to me that dogs, especially in the car for safety purposes, learn wait. So I'm going to talk about how I might expand that to teach it in a car in a little bit. But I'm going to skip back to stay and talk about how we utilize or how we start to train that behavior, because it's really important. It's really 3 different exercises that I work on individually, and then I combine all of them once the dog starts to get better. So what does that look like? We call it the 3 Ds. Consult your handbook for help in remembering what this looks like. Stay has 3 elements. It is distance, duration, and distraction. So what that means is when I ask a dog to stay, distance is how close am I to the puppy when I have asked them to not move, to stay. Am I standing right next to them or am I 30 feet away? So distance. Duration, how long am I asking you to do this? I've asked you to go to your place and lie down. Am I doing it for 5 seconds or 50 minutes? So obviously, closer distance, shorter time is easier. And then the third element is distraction. What's happening around me or around that dog when I'm asking them to stay? So obviously, again, we start off with the lowest amount of distraction inside, nothing else going on to tempt that dog to get out of the stay. The most important thing to know is that I do all 3 of those elements individually before I make combinations. So what I tend to see when people start introducing stay is they put their puppy, say, in a sit or a down. They tell them stay. They start to walk away and they look at their watch and they try to count, a certain amount of time. So we've already combined 2 elements. Rate of failure is going to be pretty high when you start to combine elements and the dog isn't great at either of them. So we start usually with duration. I can be right next to the puppy. I tell them stay and I just keep doling out treats as the dog is in. I'm going to use down for the most part because that's really our most important skill is a down stay. So I will start doling out treats. I don't gain any distance and I have 0 distraction level. I wait till I can gain a decent amount of of duration, of length of time. And then I'm going to put that one aside for a little bit. And then another period of time when I come back for another training session, I'm going to work on distance. And what does that look like? It means that I put the dog in a down, I might give him a treat, I might move a little bit. I'm not gaining a lot of distance, but I'm moving, maybe side to side, maybe back a foot, and I come back in and I treat the dog after each slight little movement. So the dog understands just because I'm moving doesn't mean you move. And then once the dog gets the idea, okay, just because you're moving around doesn't mean I get to move, then I can start adding like actual moving a couple feet away, coming back in, treating, moving a couple feet away. I'm always treating in between each movement. So the dog is heavily rewarded during the behavior. Once I tell them okay and I've released them, no treats after that. I want that dog to love being in that position. Nothing good happens after. It should be like, oh, that's too bad. Like, can we start that again? And then the last one is distraction. So I will create distractions by maybe just like standing right next to the dog. So I have no distance, I have no duration. I will just put them in a down, wave a toy, give them a treat, and release them. Then maybe I'll put them in the down. Again, no duration, no distance. I will bounce the ball, treat the dog, and then release them. So I can start adding small amounts of distraction. If I have a helper like Melissa's here, what she might be doing is, standing there, treating the dog really heavily well, I'm further away with a distraction, like walk by with another dog. Treat, 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 release the dog, done. So those 3 elements are how we start to introduce stay. And then you'll see how we start to introduce weight. It's a little bit harder to describe, so I want to actually videotape what that looks like in a second. All right, here we go.